Welcome, everyone. I'm Clyde, one of the Dharma leaders here at Insight Meditation Community Charlotte. For those of you who have your video off, you want to take a moment, let's take a moment and say hello to everybody, just to wave at everybody. And then we'll get back to, before we get started, see who all's here. Okay, great. Well, thank you for being here tonight. If you're like me, or probably what a lot of y'all have gone through over the past few weeks, months, particularly the last 2 weeks, there's been a lot of sensory input going on. And I have been working with this idea of the senses and how we work with the senses to help reduce our suffering. So tonight I want to go back over what are these 6 sense bases that we work with. We're going to look at what they are. We're going to look at why they're important, and then I'm going to give you some things that how I've been working with them. And this is working toward how we work with this. Like I said, everything's toward ending our suffering. So what are the 6 sense bases? Sometimes they're called the 6 sense spheres, but that's too hard for me to say over and over. So I'm going to say the 6 sense bases. There's seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, bodily sensations, and thinking. We normally think of 5 senses, but in the Buddhist teachings, we add the 6th sense, and that's thinking. Now, there's really like 4 things going on with each one of these. There is an internal sense organ. There's an external sense object. There's contact. And then there's what they call a sense consciousness. And this is kind of like just the beginning of things. So, and I will go through each one of these. So our internal sense organ is like for eye, there's a visible form, which is a sense object, contact, and then there's seeing consciousness, or just seeing. And we can do that for each one. There's the ear, there's a sound, contact, and then hearing consciousness. Sometimes it's called ear consciousness or hearing consciousness. There's nose, there's odor or aromas. They come together and there's consciousness arises. Tongue, taste, and then tasting. There's the body. There are tactile sensations, and this can be like touch. It could be the air on your skin. It could be a tingling sensation or something inside the body. And when that comes together, there's contact, and there is sensations, bodily sensations, or just sensations. I use the word sensations a lot when I'm talking about the body. And then there's this thing called the mind, which is an internal sense organ. There are mind objects, and Joseph Goldstein describes these as thoughts, reasoning, memory, reflection, moods, emotions. And when these arise, come in contact with the mind, then we have thinking consciousness. So all 4 of these things kind of have to be together for us to kind of operate. So that's what we talk when we're talking about the 6 sense bases. This is kind of what we're talking. This is what we're working with. So the question is, why are they important? And Guy Armstrong says in his book on emptiness, he says that the 6 sense bases describe a comprehensive field that includes all of our ordinary experiences. In other words, this is how the world is experienced by us. This is how we experience the world. In the Buddhist discourse on totality, this is called Sabba Sutta, S-A-B-B-A Sutta. The Buddha says, "Listen, monks, attend carefully, and I will teach you the totality of things." What is the totality? It is simply the eye and sights, the ear and sounds, the nose and smells, the tongue and taste, the body and sensations, the mind and mind objects. If anyone were to proclaim a totality beyond this, that person would be speaking of something outside their knowledge. So in other words, this is how we, and I even have to say, this is how we experience the world. It's everything. There's nothing outside of these six senses. So my challenge for you this rest of the week is try to find how you experience something outside of one of these. If you do, let me know. So it's just this everything. And so that's how we experience things. So why this is important then is because if this is ever how we're experiencing everything, this is where we'll be experiencing suffering. And the Buddha was teaching, suffering and the end of suffering. So he's saying, okay, this is how this works. So if this is how it works, this is where we can work with it to help end our suffering. It gives us these six sense basis gives us a readily accessible, because they're right here, way of reducing our suffering in every moment. Because in every moment, we're experiencing one of these. Maybe we're not want to sleep, but other times we're working with one of these senses. So it's the opportunity to work with our suffering. The Buddha even says, Buddha talked about, if you're looking for long-term happiness and benefit, how do you get it? In the Na Tumhaka Sutta, he says, monks, whatever is not yours, let go of it. Your letting go of it will be for your long-term happiness and benefit. And what is not yours? The I is not yours. Let go of it. Your letting go of it will be for your long-term happiness and benefit. Forms are not yours. I consciousness isn't yours. Eye contact isn't yours. Whatever arises in dependence on eye contact is either experience as pain, pleasure. It's neither pain or pleasure. That's our Vedana or our feeling tone. That too isn't yours. Your letting go of it will be for your long-term happiness and benefit. And then he goes through each one of these. The eye is not yours, let it go. The nose isn't yours. The tongue isn't yours. The body isn't yours. The mind isn't yours, let go of it. Your letting go of it will be for your long-term happiness and benefit. So he's telling us, work with these for your long-term happiness and benefit. And so this means it must be pretty important here. And there are other suttas about this. That one of the shortest suttas in the thing says just this. And so it's a pretty important that, and it's right here for us. It's right here. We're right there with it all the time. And he does give us one way of working with it. It's pretty important in the Four Foundation, in the Noble Eightfold Path, and the step on mindfulness, the Eightfold Path, the 7th step on mindfulness. He talks about mindfulness, the fourth foundation is mindfulness, the dharmas, and one of these is working with the 6 sense bases. So he gives specific instructions on that. But I want to tell you how I've been working with it, and how I've been working with it over the past few weeks and months. The first thing I do, I have to kind of change my perspective a little bit. What I want to do, I want to look at the process instead of the content. When we're working with our senses, we kind of work with this idea of what's the process of how this is going on versus the content of what's happening. In other words, there's just seeing. How can I look at this? Just seeing, it's just smelling, it's just thinking, and not go in the content. I'm seeing, these flowers over here. I'm seeing this picture here. I'm smelling this good bread cooking here. I'm thinking these thoughts. We want to look at the process and think in terms of process. There's just seeing. There's just thinking. There's just hearing. There's just taste. So we want to look at the process instead of the content. That's just our perspective on this. The next thing I try to do is to, and we talk about this a lot in here, being aware of the stories that we add to these senses. Some of you may have heard of the word Papancha. And Papancha, according to Andrew Olinsky, he said this term is used to describe the tendency of the mind to spread out from and elaborate upon any sense object that arises in experience, smothering it with wave after wave of mental elaboration, most of which is illusionary, repetitive, and even obsessive, which effectively blocks any sort of mental calm or clarity of mind. So this is just being aware of these stories that we add. We're talking about adding it onto this sense base. And we have to be very aware of this because we keep wanting to add these things to it. So I'm going to try something here. I'm going to give us a chance to try this. I'm going to bring up an image since we're working with visuals. I'm going to bring up an image, and I want you to think in terms of just seeing this image and noticing your experience of seeing this image. Just take a moment, look at it. Just be aware of your experience of seeing, the experience of seeing. Okay. So just think, what came up for you? Were you able to just seeing? Was there something that arose within you, some reaction, perception of what was going on in that situation? Did an emotion come up around this? Okay, we're in that seeing. So, but can you just see? Can you just say, this is just seeing, without adding anything to it? So we're going to try another one and try that. Try to see what arises, but the idea here is to just see. We're just seeing. Don't add anything to it. Just see it. That might have been a little bit easier to just see it. I don't know if I'm getting this across now, but there's this idea of just seeing without adding anything to it. So that's the second thing I try to do. The third thing I try to do is, and this is what a little bit more what they talks about in the Satipatthana Sutta. If I get caught up, if we go back to that first image, it may be there's been the sense object, the sense organ, sense object, where consciousness comes up, and I stick with it. I've started adding. Maybe I got some anger came up about that, some resentment, a story behind it. Okay, if I get caught up in it, then what the Satipatthana Sutta is telling me to do is look at the fetter that rose around that. A fetter I think of more as kind of like a defilement, greed, hatred, or delusion. Did anger arise? And I started telling stories about this. On the second image, did pleasant arise? And I started thinking of good memories about something. Sometimes we want to kind of look a little bit, we don't want to spend a lot of time on it. It's like, what's making me continue hanging on? What's making me add stories to this sense space when all it was seeing? So that's the second thing. The third thing, if we go a little bit deeper, we try to look and see what's that catch that's making me do this, and then coming back, what am I adding? And the fourth thing I do, which is a little bit harder to do, is it gives me an opportunity to practice the idea of non-self. When there is seeing, when there is smelling, when there is tasting, when there's a bodily sensation, we drop the I. It's not I'm seeing. There's just seeing. I'm not tasting. There's just tasting. There's thinking. I'm not tasting. I'm not thinking. There's just thinking. And it gives me just a moment to kind of play with this. Non-self is really something you want to tread with real gently, real lightly, but it gives it a moment of, okay, what's that like? What's that like if I'm not thinking this? Who's thinking it? Okay. Or who's tasting this? What's that like? What's that experience like? So it gives me a chance to kind of touch into that and say, whoa, what's this like? Because that's just experience. Life is just being experienced, but not by anybody. So it gives me a chance to kind of play with that a little bit. And the fifth thing that I do, we're working with this, is that I use it to ground myself in the present moment. It's a good way, particularly the one for bodily sensations, to come into the body, just the pressure of your feet with your standing somewhere. If there's a thought, sometimes I'll be thinking, I'll be caught up in a thought, and then I'll go, oh, that's just thinking. That's just thinking. What it helps me do is to stop adding those stories, to stop the papancha. It kind of stops that a little bit and comes back to this moment. It helps bring me back to this moment. That's just seeing. I've done this when I've walking. I can be walking, and if you're walking, you want to do it when you're in a clear space. I've been in the park walking, and I'll try it. I'll go like, it's just seeing. How can I just see without getting caught up with all the details of what I'm seeing? And it really brings me back to the present moment. It's a great way to bring me back to the present moment. What's that bodily sensation right now? There's usually always one there somewhere. What is it right now? And that's just a sensation. And that's into this moment. Sound, that's if we hear a sound, we do this in the meditation. We should do it probably more when we're in the chapel because we could hear noises around us. That's just a sound, come back to our breath versus adding stories around it. So I use it as a way to ground myself and come back to the present moment. So, and the senses are always here to be able to do that with. And the whole purpose behind doing this is to help to we get a chance also as we do is to see where we're adding the suffering because we're working with this moment. This is the totality of everything. So I can come back to this moment over and over. I can see where I'm adding the suffering and I can work with it. Oh, okay, that's just a thought. That's just a sound. Can I be with that? Can I see it? Can I hear? A good way, this is how we do mindful eating. Can I eat? I mean, it's pretty obvious if it's something I like, I'm going to eat more and I'm going to see the greed, the desire to have more. Can I just eat and see that desire and kind of start seeing the desire in that process versus being lost in the process? So there's just some of the ways I can work with it. So this is kind of what I do. I try to look at the process of the sense of this sensation, these senses versus the contact. I try to be aware of the stories that I'm adding. I try, if I get caught in a story, I try to find, well, what's that driver? What's that hook there that made me stay with this? Can I kind of drop this sense of I? Can I see? Can there be thoughts without a thinker? And then I use it to ground myself when I do get caught up in things. How can I ground myself into this present moment? So those are some of the things that I do in working with the senses, the 6 sense base. And so to close out, the Buddha said that we need to guard these, he called them the sense doors, things coming in. And in the Kuma Sutta, which is about the turtle. He talked about this turtle that had gone out, and the turtle was out foraging, and he realized over here there was the jackal over here, and the jackal was over here foraging. And the Buddha so the turtle kind of pulled in his tail, his forearms, and his head, and he sat there. And the jackal came over and said, well, I'm gonna hang around here a little bit. I'm gonna wait, and this turtle's gonna let one of these appendages, his head out, and I'm gonna grab a hold of it, and I'm gonna try to eat it. But when the turtle didn't stretch out any of its forelimbs, its tail, its neck, the jackal, not having gotten any opportunity, lost interest and left. In the same way, monks, Mara, which Mara is kind of this personification of all the defilements, is continually, ceaselessly hovering around you, thinking, perhaps I'll get an opportunity by means of the eye, the ear, the nose, the tongue, the body. Perhaps I'll get an opportunity by means of the mind. Thus, monks, you should dwell with the doors to your senses well guarded. Thank you. Now we have time for any questions or comments. You can either chat them in, or you can raise your hand, and I'll ask you to be unmuted and ask it. You're all working with your senses right now. True. That's right. Damn it. And that's kind of, it's like we think of the turtle there like that, but it's there, it's present for us to work with all the time, every moment. Yes, Larry. Larry says he's asking about, oops, I've got it. The idea of senses having doors that need to be guarded. Mindfulness awareness is key to the whole thing. The whole thing. And so everything I talked about tonight, it requires mindfulness or awareness to be able to do this. You can't do it without that. And one thing that I thought, Andrew Olinsky, I didn't read it. When we're doing this, when we're doing this, talking about just sounds, just this, just that, he says, the basic awareness is merely an episode of knowing, carrying no content or qualities of its own. When I'm knowing, seeing, there's no quality, there's no of its own, it's just seeing. And awareness itself, if we can reach it under all the whirl and spin, is tranquil, luminous, and unadorned. So if we can get to that point where we can just see there, that's that point of kind of awareness. This sounds like that. You will, Marty, Jim, you will stay engaged. You will stay engaged. You're seeing and you're working with this, and you're not going to do it. You're going to be engaged. It's not like you're going to see. This is a practice of working with seeing the suffering and seeing where you're getting hooked and seeing, does that reduce your suffering? So that you will not be, you will continue to stay engaged in the world. It's a practice that we continue doing that. We see that. So then we can say, okay, this is just seeing. I'm not going to add anything to it. I'm not going to be increasing my suffering. I'm not going to become attached to anything. So it's a form of reducing attachment to things. but we will continue to be. We don't. You get advanced in that, and you see what's going. This is what's really going on. We really see how things really are, and it does sound like it's a detached way. It does sound like that, but I think you have to just practice, see what it's like, see what it is. Let me see if I can get. Hold on a second. All right. That was. I think y'all can read it. That was pretty revealing. My senses connect me to the world, which leads to suffering. The solution is to drop everything, meaning no more connections, and then I float like a crowd without being aware of the world anymore. I think what you're going to be able to do is see where the suffering takes place. So as you're seeing, you see this is a scene. This is where the suffering is taking place. I'm not going to add anything to it. We can see exactly what's going on in the world. And I think you'll still be aware of the world. You'll still be aware. You'll see that place of awareness, of what's going on. And if we drop what we're going to be dropping a lot are these defilements. We're working with dropping these defilements, not being caught up with them. And that's going to allow room for the Brahma Viharas to arise, compassion, loving kindness, and there will be action out of that. Good perspective. Debbie asks, it talks about without falling into judgment, a story of just seeing and moving on feelings indifferent to witness and suffering. It feels uncaring. How do you care and not suffer? I don't think you can. I think to care is if we're going to suffer and care, they're together. It's that idea of going back with compassion. If we saw that picture, we have compassion for this animal, and we want to do something about it. I think this all works together. That we do care, and it brings up compassion. It brings up this loving kindness, and it brings up action. It brings up action. I don't think you can. I think suffering can help lead to caring. No, yeah, I feel compassion for the elephant. Let me think for a moment. If you see something that brings an immediate emotional response, like, oh, what is the next step to see it in the right way? Well, there's not a right way to see it. What we're trying to do is see what we're adding to this sense base, this sense base is there. We're adding things to this sense data. And this is a practice, and we begin to see where we're adding. And until we are clear of defilements, we will continue to add this stuff to it, and we'll continue to suffer. And we have, like for the elephant, we have compassion. There will be action, because that's going to allow room for that. But if it goes back to that thing, actions is going to happen. If I'm acting out of Compassion is one thing, and if acting on anger is another thing. Anger is going to lead to more suffering. Compassion is going to lead to less suffering. But until we see it, until we see what we're adding, we are going to be in a reactionary state. And that's part of it. We're going to be reacting constantly to what's going on because of these things come up. And until we see, and that's what this practice does, we see it. And wanting to see, what am I adding to this? Am I adding a wholesome action, or am I adding an unwholesome action? But if we don't practice this, we're not going to see what we're adding. You see it, but you don't want to anchor it or to the story. You don't want to create. You want to see it. That's the big thing is we want to see it. And that's what this whole practice is about. Awareness. Hello.
So Clyde, in the example of the elephant, the immediate reaction I had was, oh, horrific, awful, sad. And then I thought to myself, I have no idea if those were veterinarians there for help. So my story changed very quickly. And then just trying to see, because the truth is I didn't really know exactly what was going on, but both, hatred came up and then delusion. So perhaps if I were without that and I could just see it, it would keep me from getting paralyzed by my story and my reaction. And then I could be thoughtful to either gather information I need to see what action is then wholesome. Would that be kind of along the vein?
It's the idea of seeing what was happening there when you were doing it.
Oh, seeing the process I'm going through rather than seeing the elephant in the scenario, observing my process.
You saw the process. There was just seeing what's taking place. Then you were adding all this stuff onto it.
Okay.
And I think until we get to the point of the Buddha almost, we're going to be adding all this stuff because the defilements, we haven't worked through all these defilements yet. And we're going to be adding this stuff. And I'm not saying we're not going to act, we're not going to see things, we're going to get upset, we're going to do this. But if we're acting out of a reactionary process all the time, we're just continuing the whole process of suffering. And this doesn't happen overnight. This takes a lot of practice. And it's not just this practice, it's our meditation, it's our mindfulness, our awareness. All this is working together to see where the suffering's coming from. But it doesn't mean we're going to sit and not take action. Good questions, good discussions. And like I said, it's just something to work with. It's another one of those things we work with. And the idea is we're not going to be away from the world. We're going to be in the world. And we can't. We have these senses. But it's just another way for us to be able to see the way things are. Okay, I think I'll do the announcements now. If anybody has any questions, they're welcome to put them up. Next week, we're going to have our annual Sangha meeting. We'll be here. We'll have our instruction period. We'll also have a meditation, but then we'll have the Sangha meeting, and that's where you get to hear from all the people that makes all this happen. It's interesting to see. On February the 3rd, we'll have a guest leader, Joe Parisi, will be here leading us that evening. February the 4th, which is a Thursday, the winter book discussion, which will be led by Joy. It's called The Wisdom of Monastic Women. The spring series will be on the 3 factors of existence. And that's going to be starting on Wednesday, February the 10th it'll be for 4 weeks. It's 3 factors, we'll have 4 weeks of that. There is a basic series, the basics of meditation will be led by Debbie. We'll start on March the 2nd for 4 weeks. And then we have our meditation instructions that start at 7 o'clock each Wednesday night. And the first Wednesday of the month, which will be in 2 weeks, we have the practice discussion that starts at 6:45, and those links are on the website. And our website is www.imccharlotte.org for any other events or informations on these offerings. Any other non-IMCC related announcements? Any other announcements? Bailey doesn't like Frisbees. So, just let you know, he's not a... no other announcements. Oh, well, we have one more. Hold on. Did I? Okay, hold on.
Thank you. I just wanted to remind everyone that we use the Group Me app in order to communicate if there are any meta needs within our Sangha. Also, if we have any changes in programming that's at the last minute, it's a good, quick way to get in touch with our Sangha. And then also we've had some pop-up meditation groups, such as on MLK Day. They all met at Boyce Park for a bit to meditate together in a socially distanced outdoor fashion. So for these items, if you're not on GroupMe and you would like to join, I'm going to put my email there. If you will please, I think I put my email there. I put it earlier.
You did earlier.
If you'll please contact me, and if you just give me your name and your phone number, and what it will do is I will send an invitation that comes through text link, and if you don't have the GroupMe app already, it will direct you to download that onto your smartphone. If you don't have a smartphone, you'll just receive text message, and that's the advantage. So it hopefully will reach all the Sangha. I would ask when you join that if you receive a message such as a great post to a great talk somewhere, if you want to thank that contributor, if you'll please go to the send direct message. Please do not respond to the whole group, because that sends text messages to everyone who does not have a smartphone and repeat it. So anyways, if you have interest, please let me know. I really appreciate it, and good to stay connected. Everybody stay well.
So let's end tonight with our meditation. Oh, well, there's if you we still collect any type of dana will be is available through the website to help support the program here. So get comfortable for your meditation. Take a moment to breathe in, relax. There may be a little bit of a sense of joy tonight. And wanting to send metta to everybody, a little bit more of a joyful metta here. As always, we begin with ourselves. And I'll say some phrases, and you can repeat those silently to yourself or use ones that you're used to using. May I be safe and protected. May I be healthy and strong. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I live with joy and ease. Now bring to mind someone that you would like to send loving kindness to, someone that's in need at this time for whatever reason. May you be safe and protected. May you be healthy and strong. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you live with joy and ease. Now let's direct our loving kindness to all beings in the world. All beings. May all beings be safe and protected. May all beings be healthy and strong. May all beings be filled with loving kindness. May all beings live with joy and ease. And may any benefit that that is received from tonight's meditation and practice be for the benefit of all beings everywhere. May all beings be free. Thank you. Enjoy your evening.